recording. There you go.
Hi everyone, so we've got Ashley, the evidence to impact team today, talking a bit about evidence to impact and how they work with academics, sort of improve impact research, and we work at intervention development. I'll let Ashley speak a bit more about that now.
If you want to introduce Peter as well, start, or
Did you want to introduce him now? Or?
Sure, Peter, do you want to just jump up and be introduced? So there's Peter. He's just started as TARG research administrator. So he will be the new me in this function moving on. So I'll back up so you can see Peter's body.
Hi there, nice to meet you all. Looking forward to meeting you in person.
And yeah, okie dokie. So I will, yes, pass across to Zoe. Or have you just introduced? Ashley.
Sorry. Apologies,
Whoa.
it's been a while since I've done this, so anyway, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley. It's nice to see a strong turnout, more than I was expecting for the Easter holidays, certainly. Anyway, today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the company that I work for. We're called Evidence to Impact, and the talk I'm going to be giving today is about delivering impact for new research, but specifically how Evidence to Impact has collaborated with academics in the past to enhance the reach of their work. A little bit of background about who we are. Evidence to Impact is a university-owned social enterprise spin-out from the University of Bristol and Cardiff University. So we were founded in 2010 off the back of a successful phase 3 trial evaluating the effectiveness of a smoking prevention program called ASSIST. Since the company was founded in 2010, we've gone on to deliver ASSIST and to many students, over 160,000 students in the UK, in France, as well as in Colombia, as part of research projects, and very soon we'll also be delivering ASSIST in China, the Philippines, and Indonesia as part of a project that's being funded by the Global Challenges Research Fund. So its original methodology has actually now been adapted for use in other interventions that include physical activity to sexual health and more recently gambling prevention. So it's a really, really strong, useful methodology that's been used in a variety of settings, and as a result of how widely we've disseminated it, the original ASSIST trial was used as a 4-star ref case study by both the University of Bristol and Cardiff University.
I don't know what that was.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, yep. So that's that. So it kind of seems like at the moment all we do is ASSIST, and we have done that for quite a long period of time, but we are trying to expand our reach to share our experience and knowledge with other researchers, and broadly just try to bridge the gap between public health research and the people who really need it. And since we started the company, how exactly we bridge the gap between research and people who need it has evolved. We are now involved with academics at every stage of the research life cycle, be it a pilot trial, a proof of study, proof of concept, a confidence in concept, all the way through to a phase 3, full-scale phase 3 trial. We've assisted many researchers in developing their research project to maximize its impact. So where help is needed in the form of an industry partner, we can be listed as an industry partner or a co-investigator and help shape their research projects. And this can happen in terms of shaping the actual research bid itself, but also if the bid is found to be, if the application is found to be successful, we then provide ongoing support throughout the rest of the research project. With our knowledge of the public health landscape and generally how local authorities work in the UK, we can be written into bids as consultants to provide market analysis, market appraisal, and business plans at an early stage. And again, this depends on the nature of the intervention itself. If a research project is towards the end of its life cycle and found to be effective, we can help transform that intervention into a project, into a product that has licensable IP, and ultimately what results is an intervention that can be used in a multitude of different settings, be it in schools and healthcare systems, or even in the wider community. So finally, we can also support academics and universities through secondments and short-term contracts. So sometimes researchers hired for a specific project become unavailable for an extended duration for a variety of different reasons. And depending on the nature of the project and the role, we are able to step in for the unavailable researcher. Although this agreement typically occurs with projects that we have already collaborated with the researchers on. And so given our awareness of the project, we are able to jump into the work immediately, and this saves the lead researchers a lot of time in terms of the very lengthy hiring process, as well as getting the new researcher up to speed. So this is a situation that works quite well for both parties involved, really. And a little bit about KTPs, those are knowledge transfer partnerships. We have offered those in the past, very short basis, and that's primarily for early career researchers. And that's typically when they come and work with us for a few days, although TBC because we don't have an office anymore, but I'm sure we can work on something. So they come and learn with us for a few days what exactly it is we do, how we do it, gain some business acumen and generic business skills, I suppose, and we help them think about what they should be looking out for in their research project to ensure that it can be delivered with impact at later stage, and hopefully these skills are something that they can use at present in their current projects, as well as just moving forward in their larger research career. So with this expertise in packaging research and delivering it to the public, we just want to be able to share it with as many researchers as possible, because we know that actually this is not something that universities train academics to do at all, and it's just a bit of a black hole. How do academics learn about this? I think the bottom line is that they don't, which is sad, and that's why we are here to try and help people learn as much as possible. But in terms of transforming research into an intervention, how we do it primarily starts with working with universities to gain impact funding. So universities will have different pots of funding that aren't necessarily always made public to the academics. And they're available at different times of the year, depending on the size and scope of the project. And so what funding we, as in us and the researcher, apply for will often depend on what is best suited to the project, but also a pragmatic approach to see what is actually available. And if successful, we can then use this funding to refine and update intervention materials. And again, this varies on the type of intervention that we are targeting. If it's one whose design has already been worked on extensively throughout the research process, say an app where the app developer would have been working constantly with the researchers to refine the user experience and the user interface, and the design element wouldn't be useful for that, but the funding could go towards a fee, for instance, for embedding the health app onto an app library. But in instances where the intervention content needs to be tailored and adapted, we can also do that, but that was, of course, we would do that without removing the core intervention component and only with the lead researcher's approval, just to make sure that it still works. So yes, all of this work is undertaken in collaboration with local authorities, public health commissioners, GPs, and school senior management, just to get a sense for what they think is appropriate and what would sell, what they're interested in. Finally, we can also help provide training protocols to ensure that the intervention is accessible and easily understood for people who are delivering the intervention, as well as we can also develop quality assurance frameworks, which can be really, really important for retaining fidelity of the intervention, although this can be a bit of a contentious point, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail later. A few examples of the projects that we have worked on. So the first one listed is the translation of intent into a public health program in partnership with researchers at the University of Leeds. But this is actually a case study I'll be talking about later, so I'll move on to the next point. The second item on the list was for a project called Program A. As I mentioned earlier, the ASSIST methodology has been adapted for use in lots of different research projects. So program A is actually the original assist methodology, but targeting gambling prevention. Apart from that, many of those core intervention components are fairly similar. So the program currently where it is in the research lifecycle, it was funded by the MRC for development study. But in the middle of that research project, the research associate went off on maternity leave. And so because the company has extensive knowledge of what assist entails, and trying to bring other people up to speed on that is extremely time consuming. And we were already involved with that research bit anyway. So the lead researcher, and we also felt that it was a natural fit for us to get involved in. So I filled that maternity post cover and was seconded to the University of Edinburgh to assist the researcher in completing the rest of the tasks. And some of you, so moving on to the next item, some of you may be aware of Drinkless. Yes, yes. But for those of you that don't, Drinkless is an app to reduce excessive alcohol consumption. It was created by researchers at University College London. So increasingly, funding agencies are asking researchers to provide information in grant applications that they fund, and to ensure that they can be delivered sustainably if they are found to be effective. And this is something that we were asked by them to contribute towards. Again, this is another case study, but I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But I'm just going to ask everyone a question. Just what are or have been the obstacles to generating impact in your research?
I feel some of the things that you talked about, there's a chicken and egg with the business plan. So when we went to DPFS, for people that don't know, MRC DPFS is a pathway, a development, an intervention development scheme that's sort of getting it ready for a trial. So it's that middle bit. And they asked for route to market. They asked for almost a USP that's going to sell. And then when we got involved, he was also then asking to fund you guys to do a market appraisal that we should have already done. So I struggle with where that comes and how you fund it if you're supposed to have done it in advance. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I think I don't have an answer to that one, I'm afraid. It's just, I think the DPFS is quite a specific one, isn't it?
I mean, I've seen it in others where it's, I suppose it might be a different question to this, and it's more an obstacle around funding, which is, I guess, when is sort of just showing there's a viable route to market enough compared to showing that someone will invest in your product, and maybe that's the difference. So I struggle, I guess, with getting that right, and I think from feedback with DPFS we didn't quite get that right, and I'm still not quite sure why.
There's a bit of a mismatch, I think, between, like, for a long while funders were like, okay, well, I'm gonna throw money at a lot of things, but historically a lot of money has been spent on research projects with very little returns, and I think eventually something ticked and they realized we need to have something to show for it. So right now they're asking for evidence of things that just hasn't ever been available. But what sometimes can happen, or sort of betters the chances of the application being accepted, is if there's an industry partner who's willing to sort of shore up a lot of their time. It really depends on the nature of the project itself. Sorry, I'm not really making a lot of sense at this stage, am I? But you're right, it is chicken and egg, but it is really, really important for researchers to be thinking about these from as early in advance as possible, because there is a major change. Funders are really looking to ensure that they're not just throwing money into a black hole, which is what they've been doing for many years. But yes, does anyone else have any thoughts or
Also,
examples?
if anyone online wants to put anything in the chat, Zoe is checking the chat and can read out your thoughts.
Mine's more generic and something we chatted about in our workstream lead meeting of like not fully understanding what all the measures of impact are. So I might be having impact, but I'm just not thinking about it in the right way.
You're right, very good. Jasmine is saying that I think impact is quite a subjective measure, isn't it? Impact can be delivered in terms of policy dissemination, for instance, all the way to real world dissemination of the, but again, this is something that's very project specifics. I think our work has largely been focused in transforming something. If there is a product or service to be delivered, it's something that's more policy based, then of course it'd be subject to different metrics. But in terms of it being, say, a health prevention intervention, trying to deliver it at scale, an impact event, for instance, like disseminating the results at the moment in the eyes of the funders just simply wouldn't really be enough. They want to see evidence of it being evidence of it potentially being rolled out at scale. So just something more concrete, I think, in terms of intervention development. Yeah, so these are all really, really good points. I think it's just something to just keep in mind. So I'll talk now a little bit about the specific obstacles that we faced, I think, in the past. So academics lack capacity and or market experience. This is by no means a go at anyone. It's just that academics are so incredibly busy and they haven't received training, and that out of nowhere, funders decided we need to be demonstrating impact and show that this has a route to market. But academics are so busy with their own research projects or teaching or general university bureaucracy, they don't have the time to devote to starting a company or to deliver an intervention or to maintain delivery consistently. So what really are they meant to do about it? Accessing funding to keep developing and translating the intervention can also be difficult these days without a collaborator who has a proven track record in what they are doing. Again, going back to the funders, they want assurances that they're not giving money to projects that have little guarantee that it can be delivered by people who know how to do so. So having an industry partner, depending on what the industry partner looks like, could be a really, really useful way of getting impact funding within the universities. Knowledge exchange teams in universities are often more focused on for-profit opportunities. This is not to say that they don't care about public health or social science research. It's simply the case that research that comes up from, say, like physical or chemistry or biological sciences, often the financial returns on those are significantly larger. So at the end of the day, it's just a numbers game. Social science and public health research funding is, or has been up till now, largely been given on the basis that it can be free or made extremely cheaply available for the at point of use for those who need it most. So while knowledge exchange teams in the university do try to help and have provided a lot of support in the past, it's not wrong to say that their priority or their emphasis is largely on profit sharing opportunities for the university. So more obstacles for generating impact from research. This first point actually leads on to the first one that I mentioned just now. Academics don't have the budget or the capital to invest in rolling out an intervention sustainably. The full dissemination of an intervention requires transforming the intervention from its trial materials into something that's, I guess, snazzier, for lack of a better description. You need to think about things like marketing, engaging with customers constantly, and all of those things require money and time. So many interventions have been found to be effective, but due to the lack of know-how and money and time to keep driving the project forward, and more importantly, to keep doing it over a sustained period, researchers don't have that. So a lot of the time, these products just fall over a bit of a cliff edge, really. The next point, customers prioritize fit over fidelity. So we're now seeing a mismatch between what interventions are being developed by academics as well as what is realistically acceptable by the customers. And just fundamentally, a lot of this just comes down to cost, sadly. Public health budgets have been completely disseminated in the last decade by the current government. They're nothing at all like what they were when the company was first started out under the previous government. So that is a major shame, but the companies managed to stay afloat and had to be flexible at different times. But anyway, There are many interventions that are effective in improving health behaviors and have been shown not the same thing as being affordable, sadly. Local authorities don't have the time or the money to implement interventions that are financially and resource intensive. And as a result, they prioritize interventions that are smaller and a better fit over one that has many components and requires strict fidelity to the intervention. So earlier mentioned about the quality assurance framework, and that has to be done with a fine balance between the researchers to ensure the fidelity, but while making sure that it's not too onerous for the customers to take on. But again, that's something we only found out through the implementation phase of some of our interventions. And finally, the entire life cycle of developing an intervention can occur over an extremely long period, between 10 and 15 years. In that time, the materials of the intervention are bound to change, and they need to be updated to ensure that they are acceptable and fit for purpose for whoever they're being delivered to. And they sometimes also require training to ensure that it's delivered to a high enough standard to ensure fidelity. So if the academics in charge of the original project don't take this on, who is meant to do it? So I think that's just a very present real world. It is so incredible, the number of ideas, great research projects that come out of universities, but the fact is that what has previously, the research projects that have previously been developed have not considered these real world barriers. And as a result, many of them have yet to be delivered in real world society. So I've just talked about the obstacles that exist when trying to deliver and generate an impact from research. I'm now just going to talk through a couple of case studies projects that we have worked on just at different stages of the research life cycle. So again, as some of you may know, Drink Less is a theory-driven, evidence-based mobile app developed by researchers at UCL to help people reduce their excessive alcohol consumption. It's not designed for use by people with alcohol addiction who should instead be using alcohol support services, but it should instead be used by the wider population who just want to cut down on their excessive drinking. So the UCL researchers contacted us in the process of putting together their funding application for the NIHR for a phase 3 trial. And as I mentioned, funders are looking for assurances that projects that they fund will not wither in the vine due to a lack of consideration for delivery options in the future. So the UCL researchers contacted us for assistance in this area. To that end, we engaged in many discussions with the researchers to see how we could help, and we were written in to the NIHR funding application with a consultancy fee. And for that fee, we would produce a report and in-depth detailed look at the market to see how Drink Less could fit into it and be delivered sustainably. And the specific brief of what was to be included in the report was pre-agreed between the researchers as well as us before we undertook the rest of the work. So when you're trying to differentiate your product in the marketplace, you have to just first get a sense for the landscape, what is currently being offered, as well as the potential competition. So we first conducted an appraisal of the global digital health market, as well as within the UK, and also looked at the different routes to embedding Drink Less into mHealth app libraries and what that would entail. But really, it's just trying to work out what the appetite is for digital health at the moment. But just some backlight, it is extremely wide and burgeoning even before COVID happened. But I think even especially after COVID, mHealth apps have just absolutely shot through the roof, very few of which are evidence-based, and there are different initiatives going on to try and weed out the bad ones, I suppose, in the UK. But the point is, there is a lot out there. So how do you really make a product like Drink Less stand out in such a crowded marketplace? Then we looked at the alcohol support services in the UK. Is Drink Less something that could be embedded within those services? And as a result of that, we looked at alcohol charities and had conversations with GPs. We spoke to them about their general thoughts about how they would feel about prescribing, well, like not prescribing, but like recommending that patients take if they use an app that's just widely available. Their thoughts on whether it could be centrally prescribed through the NHS, for instance, how else they would recommend that drink less be taken up, or where exactly in the clinical pathway it could fit in. So all that information was collated together. And we also conducted a few different case studies looking at current successful and unsuccessful mHealth apps, which targeted different health behaviors, as well as operated with a variety of different business models, just to see is there anything we could learn from why this mHealth app has been delivered so successfully. All of that information was collated and put together into a report, and based on that, we developed an action plan with recommended activities that the researchers should partake in before putting out the intervention to market. I can talk a little bit more about that in detail later if anyone has specific questions, but I'm not going to mention too much about that now because I think it's probably a bit too specific. But yeah, once we had completed the report, we discussed our findings with the lead researchers, and there were specific activities following on from the report that the researchers needed help with. So it's currently still an ongoing process. It's not like we complete the report and shove it back to the researchers with absolutely nothing to be done after that. This depends on the intervention. If there's something that we can help with, then we will. But fundamentally, this is all dependent, like whether or not our action plan is carried out will also depend on whether or not the research is found, or drink less is found to be effective in reducing people's alcohol consumption. So until we find that out, the project is a bit on, or is on hold, but we should find out soon. Moving on to the next case study. This is a product that we engaged with much later on in the research life cycle. Instead of the researchers approaching us, we actually contacted them. And how this was done was because I conducted a literature scope just to see what sort of interventions were available in the market that we could assist in translating. And we actually got in touch with the researchers who had heard of us before. And I will say, however, that the cases, like these sorts of cases, are increasingly rare these days, where it comes to a phase 3 trial and then nothing happens to it, because again, funders are looking for more assurances these days. So with the case of Intent, whose research spanned over 15 years and results only became published recently, yeah, they're just quite rare. Yeah. So anyway, Intent is a smoking prevention program, which was primarily developed by researchers at the University of Leeds. And I say primarily because, of course, the core intervention itself was developed by the researchers, but since then, it's been given a name, a brand, the materials have been transformed, and a few other key offerings have been added to the product. I'll show you that in a bit more detail later. It's based on implementation intentions, which are the formation of if-then plans, which focus on how, where, and when to perform a specific behavior. So they Intent reduces smoking initiation by first getting adolescents to engage with anti-smoking messages. So that's the content about why you shouldn't smoke in the first half of the lesson. And then they create their personal plans, which is their if-then plans, about how to refuse the offer of a cigarette. The intervention itself is school-based and it targets secondary school students. So as I mentioned, we actually contacted the lead researcher who had heard of us before due to our background in delivering assist. And he was keen to get Intent delivered to other schools in the UK, but just didn't know how to or didn't have the contacts. So given our experience with delivering assist, both nationally and locally and globally, just overseas, I guess, he thought that we were a natural fit, as we also had access to our previous customers and also wanted to take the project forward. And I think that was a key thing. There aren't many people who have the capacity of the infrastructure and the access to customers. So we both thought that it was a natural fit that we take this project forward. A little bit more about Intent. It targets the entire secondary school year from year 7 to 10, and it's delivered by teachers. It consists of 2 sessions each year, which are 6 months apart, and the sessions are 45 to 6 minutes each. So we helped develop intense links to the PSHE curriculum so that the lessons could be taught in PSHE class. But the links to the PSHE curriculum are really important because it's not something that was present in the original trial. But it having those current links to the PSHE curriculum makes it a really key selling point to the local authorities, as teachers are often evaluated on Ofsted on how they're performing according to this curriculum. So that is a way in which we've added value to the project. We also developed a very, very light touch quality assurance framework, and this helps us ensure that the sessions are delivered as intended by the researchers. And this allows us to record metrics, which can be used by any impact case studies by the University of Leeds. But again, this has to be extremely light touch because we don't want it to be onerous at the local authorities and schools say we don't want to participate in this. So yeah, we applied for various parts of impact funding from the University of Leeds, and that allowed us to transform the materials to ensure that they were up to date and palatable for customers. And we were also able to engage designers who helped us with creating the branding, as well as designing the website, which is a key offering of the product, which I will now show you. So this is the main page for the website, and that any potential customers can access information about what intent is, what its benefits are, the evidence behind intent, etc. A closer look at what we offer. Again, the licensing model is something that we came up with and had developed based on our previous experience with Assist. And this was subjected to approval by the University of Leeds Tech Transfer Office. So we help train local authorities. This is the train the trainer model. We train individuals in local authorities who then go on to train teachers within the school so that they can deliver it. So we don't have any direct interaction with the teachers, even though they can contact us through the help desk for any other problems that they may run into. We provide electronic materials through the dedicated customer area, and as I mentioned, there's also the quality assurance framework. Again, very light touch. So this resources area is only for customers of intent in order for them to access training, materials, or anything else, any other information that they find useful. But importantly, it's really, you need to remember that intent is actually free at point of use for schools. So what that means is schools don't have to pay at all to implement it in their school. Local authorities bear the cost of the license and are able to implement intent in as many schools as they wish. And this is really important because by charging a minimal fee to the local authorities purely on a cost recovery basis, we can cover, sorry, I should have blood. We are a not-for-profit organization from the very start. It's completely done on a cost recovery basis. We cover things like marketing, engaging with customers, just our salary, just to keep the project ticking over. The help desk, for instance, there are so many different things that charging a minimal license fee can go towards, and they can implement it as many schools as they want. And by charging the fee to the local authorities, who all get a ring-fenced budget to put towards local public health each year, this ensures that it doesn't enhance health inequalities by reducing access to only those who can afford it. So, but again, the transformation of these materials was only became available through our joint application for impact funding that was available at the University of Leeds at the time. So most universities will have different pots of funding like that. I know the University of Bristol does have different amounts throughout the year, but it can vary. Anyway, to sum up, just some key learning points I want to reiterate again. Cost effectiveness is not the same thing as being affordable. Just because an intervention is shown to be cost effective doesn't mean that customers will be willing to pay for it. We've done some scoping studies in the past of interventions that we have thought to be completely incredible and had excellent outcomes, and put them out to potential customers who just flat out refused it and said, can't afford it. So just because it was shown to be extremely cost effective does not mean that there will be willingness at all to take it up. While there's technically a fee for delivering your research, it's not free completely for the local authority. It is minimal and on a cost recovery basis. But that being said, this ensures that the customers and the schools, so the students whom this is meant to be used for, are getting a high quality version of the product. And this allows the impact to be maximized and for it to be delivered on a much wider scale. And this can fundamentally have significant savings in the long term for the taxpayer. So academics are really brilliant at research, but less so at translating that research to differentiate in the market, nor do they have the time. It's not to say that they can't do it. It's just that I'm sure everyone is just completely slammed at the moment. There's just so many things to think about, let alone starting a company and learning a completely new skill set. So I think things like the knowledge transfer partnership could become really, really useful in the future. But that training infrastructure first needs to become developed. So for now, academics can and should focus on what they do best and what makes them happy. It can be a bit joyless, not gonna lie. Setting up a company and just relentless marketing, but this is something that we have done for years that we can continue to do, and it's not something that academics should pursue if they already have so much on their plate. So focus on what you can do best. There are a variety of social enterprises and private partners available, although I can understand why private partners would be, say, found unagreeable by some of you, because a lot of the time they can try to spin things into a for-profit opportunity, and that's not really the point of social health, social science and public health research a lot of the time. But depending on where you are in the research life cycle, we can also generate research and impact funding to help with delivering your research to the public. All of this can fundamentally then be used in a ref case study, which I know no one really likes the sound of, but it's pretty glittery. So there we go. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening. If you want to find out, or put the Twitter handle on, we're in the process of trying to resurrect it post-COVID. So if you would like to find us, find out more about what we do, signposting for funding, etc., and feel free to follow us. Maybe in 2 weeks. And our website is up there should you wish to take a look. Thank you very much. Any questions?
And I was interested that cost effectiveness not equaling affordability. I do think we forget that. You may not be able to answer this, but just in your experience, is it better to go online at website rather than physical materials? Because we're doing some work that we've talked about, we've got physical materials.
Yeah.
And we feel that there's this kind of balance between having to invest your time in going and looking for something online versus something that's in front of you, but then that's going to cost more. I just wondered if you had any thoughts on the future of
it. Really, I think depends on the nature of the work itself. So that's something that we're running into at the moment with the gambling prevention intervention. There is a lot of scope to transfer the materials to become online, and I think, well, hopefully we're not going to have another pandemic. Having the electronic materials would really help. That being said, just because they're electronic and easily accessible doesn't mean that it will be as engaging. So you could spend a lot of money on the first iteration of developing digital materials, but chances are you will be wanting to refine those and develop those continuously. I think that's the nature of digital materials, that you just have to keep putting money towards it, a lot more than you would do for physical resources, which is not to say that it's not impossible or the worst outcome. It just depends a lot on the nature of the intervention itself. It will depend on the target, who exactly it is you're working with. Some people work better with physical materials, some people work better with digital materials. Some people think they work better with digital materials, but actually should probably use paper materials. It's hard to say.
I've got a question from Amy on Zoom. So thank you for a very interesting talk. Please could you tell us more about opportunities for early career researchers to come and work with you and learn more about your work? Would these be open to PhD students as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's something we actually did for Abby Jackson in the past. She was on a knowledge transfer partnership. That was through University of Bristol impact funding through the IAA, I believe, impact acceleration account. And if that's something that people are interested in doing, we absolutely could do. Even if it's just a chat really to try and just work out what is for your specific research project. But increasingly we are trying to offer webinars and seminars to early career researchers. We've done that for the University of Edinburgh and the University of Sussex for how to incorporate impact into your research, how to upskill yourself. It's more detailed than this talk, of course. But yes, there absolutely are opportunities. So happy to respond to anyone specifically after the call talk if anyone wants to find out more information about that.
Isn't much like assist? Is this still going then? It is being expanded.
Assist in the UK is not going.
Okay, I was getting more
Right, actually,
picking up freighting, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so assist in the UK had a lot of interest in the previous government, but because it's very expensive, it's a 4-stage intervention, of which 2 of those training days occur in an external venue. The costs of that are significant. And while our customers have always really liked us, they like the fact that the product is evidence-based, and that there are a lot more positive sort of outcomes that result from that happen. Sorry. Peer supporters that participate in the training also experience many other positive outcomes just beyond the smoking prevention. But the thing is, fundamentally, the intervention is really expensive, and that at the time was found to be one of the most cost-effective interventions available. And you know, customers saying that to us and just continuously stripping down throughout the years. I think that in conjunction with the fact that smoking prevalence is dropping, that made it seem like it wasn't a priority, and the metrics for smoking prevention are a lot more difficult to measure than pressing needs like smoking cessation. So a large proportion of the budget for smoking in local authorities is going towards cessation, for instance. So with the introduction of a product like Intent, we actually went and contacted a lot of our previous customers saying, got another evidence-based product, it's significantly cheaper and you've worked with us before, would you like to take this on? And a lot of them have said yes. But specifically in relation to assist, in the UK, no, but there was actually quite a lot of international interest for it. We've received expressions of interest. Well, there's the GCRF, we've been contacted by people from Australia, Dubai, a whole range.
If money wasn't an option, is assist kind of more cost because of the peer support things that got stronger evidence? Forgetting putting the money aside.
It has marginally better outcomes, specifically for smoking prevention, I think, but there are many other things that assist is better for, I think. I might be biased.
Yes. And yeah, so taking Intent then, have you looked at e-cigarette use? Is it likely to pick that up?
So actually, one of the research papers behind Intent actually found that the students who participated in the intervention, wasn't participating in this intervention, attenuated the relationship between smoking and taking up use of an e-cigarette. So it's not research solely looking at e-cigarettes. There was no content about e-cigarettes at all inside it, but the researchers did test the change in behavior, and it was found in that. But that particular research was done some years ago when the e-cigarettes available were still the first gen ones. So they do say that as a caveat, and it's not necessarily translatable. But I will say a lot of customers are breathing down our necks for e-cigarette or for vape interventions and asking us to include vape content about vaping, which is constantly a struggle because they come with many misconceptions about the dangers of vaping and expect us to put it in. And it's a battle trying to say, you're wrong. But please can we still have your business? So yeah, there is definitely an appetite for it. I mean, I think even internally within our company, we had many discussions about how much information we should include. About how much vaping information.
Jazz and I were contacted by one of the public health leads at Bristol City Council on the back of just disposable e-cigarettes, just going through the proof in schools, and they were asking us to do a bit of scoping work and if there's a problem, what the problem looks like. And my PhD student Joe Matthews even mentioned this morning, and I was like, well, that would be potentially a rollout in future, but I didn't think it was likely. But it just resonates with what we've been asked to do by the council recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. It was more like the initial email was like, we need an intervention, and we had to kind of roll it back a bit to like, well, actually, we need to check there's a problem first.
I think that's it, isn't it? People really overblow the scope of the actual issue at hand, and we are actually looking at adapting intent for use in for targeting other multiple health behaviors because it's so cheap and the methodology works, and we're putting in a bid for intent, but trying to work out which health behavior to adapt it for. So we put out a questionnaire to our current customers to say, what do you think is what health behavior should be targeted? And actually a lot of them are saying vaping, but then it comes with free text about how dangerous it is and how terrible it is. So not to unpick here. So it's hard to say. If you're right, like we first need to establish that it was a problem. But
Rather than anecdotal.
yeah. Okay, hopefully you all found that informative and I didn't just babble on you. Seriously. But thank you very much for listening. Yeah.
Thank you.